PCBs are a category of chemicals that have been classified by EPA as one that we should be having 0 doses of. It's not a healthy thing to be consuming. So,
cancer-causing.
Well, yes.
And we started with a minuscule budget of $2,000, and this year we're up there near $200,000. So obviously it's been well received.
I guess I could say it in a very few words. I would say, come share the richness. That is our theme.
Hello, I'm Brian Madden. This time on the river, we'll meet 3 ladies who have something to say about the Hudson River's past, its future, and its present. We're going to discuss the environmental bond issue coming up for voters this November. We're going to be talking with the lady who operates the Hudson River Maritime Center in Kingston. And we'll have a discussion about the Hudson River's new tourism image. Welcome aboard. There are many groups that devote full time to the Hudson River, researching it and trying to restore it, and trying to keep it restored once that happens. One such group is called Scenic Hudson. Cara Lee is its environmental program coordinator.
I can tell you that we've put a lot of effort into promoting the Bond Act. It's passed the legislature, the governor has signed it in July, and now it will be going to the voters in November. And so we're very eager to have people know about the Bond Act so that they can go out and vote for it.
Intelligently.
Vote for it, that's right. We're eager to see it because here in the Hudson Valley it'll have a tremendous benefit. The Bond Act is designed to clean up hazardous waste sites and to acquire important environmental areas. And in our mind, the Hudson River and its shoreline is probably one of the state's great treasures. And since we're experiencing such rapid development in the Hudson Valley and there are large buildings going up along the Hudson, we want to see some of those areas preserved and kept for public access. So we're hoping that the Bond Act is going to not only clean up some of the problems that we have here in the Hudson Valley, but also provide some of this money for land acquisition.
What land in particular, or what kind of land is being...
Are we looking at?
Are we talking about?
Well, the Bond Act covers a wide variety of things, and it specifies that it should be environmentally important areas, which is as broad as can be, but we're looking at areas where we want to protect habitat, where it's important spawning areas for various fish and wildlife, but we're also interested in areas that have particular scenic quality or are particularly good for public access, somewhere where you could put in a boat ramp or have a park where people can come and eat their lunch or take a walk. In most instances, those kinds of purposes and uses can be combined so that you're protecting a marshland with its adjoining upland, which would be a park, and it might have very high scenic quality. So hopefully you can wrap those things together.
We talked in Warriors Park along the Hudson in Poughkeepsie, a place for lunchtime breaks and picnic tables and a boat dock where the Clearwater sloop pulls up often, and a smaller dock for those who don't need so much room. Cara Lee feels there should be more parks such as this one.
Except this is a city park, and what we would be talking about would be state-owned land. So, but yes, it could be.
The concept would be the same.
The concept could be the same. The Bond Act is also going to provide money for urban cultural parks. We happen to have a fine example here in the Hudson Valley of an urban cultural park, and that's the Kingston waterfront. And anybody who's been down to the Kingston waterfront recently would realize that there's a lot of new activity there in terms of renovating old buildings that have historic character and value. The Maritime Center, which has boats and boat rebuilding and building new boats. The Bond Act would provide money for more interpretation, more science that would explain to people what the history of the area has been, that kind of thing. So it also will be preserving buildings and spots like that, as well as the natural areas.
Cara, there's a lot of water in the Hudson, and New York City wants to pump it on a regular basis. Talk about public access. They want access for their public. What's your group feel about that?
In 1977, the city proposed a large-scale pump project for the Hudson, and we were opposed to that because we felt the impacts both on the estuary, on the river, and on the land would be enormous. Since then, New York City has been relying on its reservoir system, but it's become apparent that the level of demand has continued to grow in New York City for water, and their reservoir system isn't meeting that demand anymore. So now they're looking very seriously at pumping water out of the Hudson on a sustained basis. Last summer during the drought, you probably remember at Chelsea, they turned the pump on for the first time in 35 years. And it looks like they will probably proceed with plans to turn that pump on permanently. And they are looking at pumping 100 million gallons a day to 300 million gallons a day from that pump station. They've acknowledged that that kind of pumping will alter the saltwater intrusion into the river. And that's a great concern to communities right in this region, because Poughkeepsie and Port Ewan, Lloyd, Highland, they all rely on Hudson River water for their drinking water. So what will it mean if the salt water should move up the river? The reports that have been done so far show that if they remove 300 million gallons a day, we could expect to see that salt front move 2 miles upriver.
Which would put it where?
Which would, well, the salt front moves every day and every hour, so you can't say exactly where it would be, but it would bring it up closer to the Poughkeepsie intake pipes. And in some cases, if it was a low flow period, it could actually bring it up to that point.
Doesn't New York City realize this? I mean, are they being boorish and just saying, to heck with you guys, we need our water?
I guess the feeling is there's plenty of water in the river for everybody. I think that we need to continue to firmly make the point with New York that not only are there communities here that currently put a demand on the river also, but that the demands here are going to grow. So how do you accommodate everybody's growth, not just New York City's growth? And hopefully it's going to be possible to develop some kind of water budget that takes everybody's future into account.
Cara, when we talk of the Hudson River, on occasion the polychlorinated biphenyls subject comes up, or PCBs.
Well, people sometimes ask us, how good is the water in the river? Can you drink it? Can you eat the fish from it? And PCBs have continued to crop up over the years as a problem compound.
From where?
Well, in 1977, GE was forced by a court order to stop putting PCBs in the river from a plant quite a ways upriver, and in Fort Edward. The PCBs, many of them have washed downriver, but a lot of it is still locked up in the sediments in the bottom of the river. And when we have a big rainstorm, we get a little flush of PCBs down the river. So what we see is not only are there levels of PCBs in the water, but the sediments carry PCBs, and it's a substance which accumulates in the flesh of organisms in the river, such as fish. So really one of the places we have problems with PCBs is in the fish, because that's where they accumulate, and if you were to eat a fish, you might get a fairly substantial dose of PCBs that you wouldn't want. PCBs are a category of chemicals that have been classified by EPA as one that we should be having 0 doses of. It's not a healthy thing to be consuming. So,
cancer causing?
Well, yes, they are linked with cancer and a variety of other symptoms. And so the state currently is working on a project to dredge much of the remaining PCB-laden sediments out of the upriver portions. And we are supportive of that. We want to see them move ahead with that. And it's been a very long, slow process to get this cleanup project underway.
Does the bond issue come into play here?
Well, the bond issue could come into play here because it is a Superfund site, and so it should properly be addressed in part with Bond Act money. At this point, there's federal money for it and state money for it.
The Bond Act, do you think the public is informed enough and knows enough about it that it will pass?
I don't know if you've ever looked at the Harris polls, but they're always a very reassuring statement on Americans' attitudes towards the environment, and they're always overwhelmingly in favor of spending money on protecting and cleaning up the environment. And I think that New York State has a long history of environmental protection. You know, we have the Adirondack Park. We have all kinds of programs that are outstanding. And I think that it will pass. I think that New Yorkers are aware of the issues. I mean, there isn't anyone who doesn't know about the problems of groundwater contamination from toxic landfills. And we have those problems here in the Hudson Valley. I mean, we read about them in the paper every day. And so the Bond Act's going to make a difference for that. And I think for those reasons, it'll pass.
Cara Lee of Scenic Hudson, putting faith in the river and in the voters come November 4th. When you enter the Hudson River Maritime Center in Kingston, one of the first things that's going to grab your eye is this huge pilot wheel. It's off the cutter, the Norwich, built in 1836. It had a long career mainly as a towboat. It even was an icebreaker, and she was scrapped in 1923. But there's a whole lot more right here at the Maritime Center. It is here that much of what there is to know about the old steamboat days can be found. In charge of the center is Marita Lopez-Mena.
The museum is 5 years old. It's actually 6 years old, 1986. It was founded in 1980 by 3 separate groups of people. One was members of the Alexander Hamilton Society. That organization was formed to save the Alexander Hamilton, the last working passenger steamer on the river. The boat sank in a tragic storm, and the founders of the organization were still there and together and had many contacts in the maritime community and felt it would be a good idea to start a museum to preserve some of the history that they were all interested in. And they came together with the National Maritime Historical Society, headed by Peter Stanford, and began searching for a site on the Hudson River to locate this museum. And Kingston was the ideal site for a number of reasons. It's centrally located. There was an active and interested group of local amateur historians, and the area is very rich in maritime history. So Kingston was chosen as the site, and they got together with the local people here who were interested in starting a museum, and voila, in 1980 we had a new museum in Kingston.
What have you discovered about this river that has kind of baffled you or awed you in its history?
Oh, it's such a rich and fascinating history. I almost wouldn't know what to pinpoint. Of course, the museum's main interest is the steam era, which certainly is fascinating. I mean, there was tremendous and sudden growth with the invention of the steam engine, and it changed the entire face of the valley, the commerce that came into the valley. So certainly, steam is our primary interest.
Most of the novels and the old movies, all the steam engines are on the Mississippi, but apparently that's not where all the action was.
No, the Hudson River is the birthplace of steam.
How did that all happen?
How did what all happen? The birthplace being...
Yeah, how did it happen to be here, and how did it happen to thrive here?
Well, Robert Fulton was here, was living in the valley, and he is the person that didn't necessarily invent the steam engine, but he is the person that got it patented. And
Fulton's Folly.
Yes, and that's how it got started in the Hudson Valley. And his family was here, and his wife's family was here, and they were all contributing factors to getting the steam engine started in the Hudson Valley.
What were the steamships? What did they do? What did they carry?
Well, they carried everything. They carried all the goods and materials to New York, between New York and Albany, and they carried people. They were huge ships carrying hundreds of people at a time. You can hardly imagine. We've got an exhibit downstairs now in our exhibit hall on the Alexander Hamilton, which I mentioned was the last working steamboat on the river. And you can see this, we have a tape of it moving along the river, and it went, upward of 20 knots, which is very speedy. And they were able to offer reliable, fast transportation up and down the river, day and night. So when you're talking about hundreds of people per boat, you're talking about millions of people per year that were being moved all over the region by these steamboats. And they were carrying, of course, cargo. They were carrying produce to markets, and they were carrying coal from Pennsylvania. All all those things
Everything
that
to be
were
carried.
needed. Everything that needed to be carried, they were moving.
How did they handle the water? How were they on the water?
Well, from everything that I've read and everything that I've heard, I mean, outside of the way they looked, which was, you know, graceful and sleek and beautiful. I mean, that's why the romanticism surrounds them. They were big, white, lovely creatures that floated down the river. They were quite comfortable. I mean,
If there was one steamboat that outclassed them all, try the Mary Powell, named after the wife of the man who had her built.
the Powell was known as the Queen of the Hudson. I mean, the Powell was the longest lived, and she was very beautiful, and she was, you know, carried many people, and she was supposedly the fastest. I think she's probably the most famous, but, you know, among the steamboat buffs, everybody has their favorite for one reason or other.
And whatever happened to her?
The Powell, she was finally junked in the Rondout Creek, not very far from where we stand. She was stripped. Finally, she did her service. And there's a little bit of the Mary Powell all over Kingston and all over the area. Of course, many people claim to have a piece of the Powell. It's kind of funny. There were more wheels, apparently, than the Powell could have possibly had. You hear stories about things like that. But we have some of the things downstairs from the Powell, some of the artifacts that we know are directly attributable to the boat.
The Mary Powell was sitting along here, and then one day it was just underwater?
No, she was towed to her final resting place and scrapped. It was a decision that was made by the company that it was no longer viable to run her. A very sad day.
She'd make a great tourist attraction today, wouldn't she?
Yeah, all that's left is the bones, the outline. In low tide, you can see just the outline of the hull in the water.
Where is that?
It's up the creek, up this way. Not, you know, I don't know the exact marking place, but if you travel along in a boat and it's low tide, you can see where she rests.
Not like the Titanic. You don't need
No, you don't need
miles to go down.
No, you don't need a submarine to find the Mary Powell.
They call boats she and her. Does that bother you at all?
No, it doesn't bother me. Some of the boats were named, you know, they had men's names, certainly.
And here she comes.
Here she comes. It's a tradition.
The history of the Hudson and the boats and the people, what do you think the future of history will be?
Well, obviously, we're going through a whole revitalization of the river and the interest in the river. All kind of the work that Pete Seegers and the Clearwaters and the Woody Guthrie's of the Hudson River do have had a dramatic impact on the river and on cleaning it up and on public awareness. And it's natural that it become a big site for tourism, which is exactly what's happening. The recreational uses of the river obviously are going to grow. There's all kinds of problems already with marina space just on the Rondout Creek. I mean, nobody can find a place to put their boat. There's been a boom in pleasure boating, and we're going to have a lot of crowding, certainly in the next few years. I don't know where everybody's going to put the boat that they want to have, but I live on the Hudson River and moved there 10 years ago, and my husband and I had a sailboat in our early years on the river, and we could go out there just about any afternoon we wanted to and sail all over the river and be all by ourselves. And now if we go out on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon or even a Friday afternoon, the river is clogged with sailboats and motorboats and windsurfers, and you know, it's dramatically changing the uses of the river.
The Maritime Center in Kingston, a quiet place to spend an hour or two and see how much we've missed on the river. Come share the richness and beauty the Hudson River has to offer. That's the theme Dutchess County Tourism Director Karen Woods wants to share.
The draw is the river itself. More and more people are coming here wanting to enjoy the recreational opportunities that they have on the river, whether it be sailing or motor boating or even the cruise type of boat or ship that comes up and down the river, where they can actually see from the river the different things on shore that are of interest. And in Dutchess County, there are many of those sites along the river. And of course, the other aspect of that is being on the shore and viewing the river from the shore to enjoy the serenity that sometimes water or a river gives you. And the one thing that was, I think, traditionally a few years back, is that people did not think of the river as a recreational opportunity. It was like, you know, that wasn't even in their minds. What we find happening now in the people that come into our office or into the information center to ask questions is that there is much more interest of what is happening on the river or close to the river. So I think that is all coming back, and in many of the development ideas that are coming up, the river is being one of the things that they are certainly interested in, whether it be adding new docking facilities or making public access points to the river more prevalent, or that there are more of them available to the public, having places where boats and so forth can stop and get supplies, gas, ice, food, and things like that. So I think that the trend is there, and I think that will continue to increase. And the way our promotional efforts fit into that picture is that, of course, we would love to have people come here and share this wonderful river that we have here. And that, in combination with the many attractions, the many restaurants, the fine dining, the history, and the scenic part of what Dutchess County has to offer the visitor, is how we tie into all of that.
The agency began in October of 1984, and Karen feels the agency has made real economic headway.
We produced a travel guide to Dutchess County, which is free to anyone who inquires for the book. And I shouldn't say it's a book, it's really a brochure or a small magazine. It's a 32-page booklet that gives everything that there is to do, see, visit in Dutchess County. We've also started the development of several historic and scenic self-guided driving tours that we have one section of the county done, and we hope to, another one will be ready this month, and we hope to expand that to eventually cover the whole county. We also have a calendar of events, something that we call happenings, which gives us a listing and gives the public a listing of things that are happening, whether it's an art show or a jazz concert or anything that the public could go to see or to participate in is listed in that happenings.
As more and more folks come to the Hudson Valley to vacation, Karen feels the river itself is the biggest draw.
If you're on the river itself, on a cruise boat, of course you can see the Vanderbilt from the water. The Norrie Point Marina you can see from the water. Part of the Culinary Institute of America you can see from the water. There are other places, some of the parks and so forth you can see that are down along the river. Bowdoin Park is one of them. And many just interesting homes, if you will, that from the river you look up along the shoreline and you can see these gorgeous homes, and it's, I know when I go up and down it's like, oh, wouldn't I love to live there year-round. And there are those people who are fortunate enough to enjoy this beautiful scene every day of their lives. There are other points of interest that you cannot necessarily see from the water, but that are of historical interest, that if you were a tour guide, for instance, on the boat itself, you would mention some of those things that people could could see, or, you know, that's where that happened or whatever. And a lot of that is kind of folklorish too. So it's just kind of interesting to hear some of the stories and also some of the factual, you know, things that are happening along the river.
Karen Woods feels there is a marked increase in river and tourist activity. This due in part to many New York City and Westchester people having vacation homes in the area. She believes the quality of life here is one of the many things that attracts them.
Come share the richness. That is our theme, and it is one of the slogans we use. And I would say, come share the richness of all the things to do in Dutchess County.
Well, there you have it for this time. The Hudson River's future, its past, and its present. Thanks for coming aboard, and we'll be back here next week on the river.